Hello, welcome to Cinema Savvy, and welcome back to our weekly Game of Thrones discussion channel. I'm Chris, joined with Tate, and we're not only talking about episode 4 of Game of Thrones season 8, The Last of the Starks. We're also celebrating our 4-year anniversary on the channel. If you've seen Battle of the Brackets yesterday, you saw that we were saying that tomorrow or today is our 4-year anniversary, and it has been a trip. It has been a very I can't believe it's been 4 years. Like, looking back, the time has just gone just like that. But yeah, we're kind of here to celebrate 4-year anniversary, but specifically we're here to talk some Game of Thrones, and a lot went down in this episode.
A lot did go down.
So much, and we're on a bit of a tight schedule today, so we're going to get through it as very quickly as we can. Needless to say, for me, this was a darn sight better than episode 3, The Long Night, an episode which I think will probably go down in history as like one of my least favorite.
I'll tell you this, Chris. This wasn't actually received very well at all.
Really?
This episode was not received well at all. I saw a lot of reviews online discrediting the writing, discrediting the character moments and stuff like that. A lot of people hated this episode from what I saw. I'm not gonna lie, I love this episode. This is a great episode.
Honestly, it surprised me that you've said that. I thought this was, in terms of writing, there's a few problems here and there which I'll get to later in the discussion, mostly due to things that characters do that I wouldn't see them doing. I would see them doing something else.
First of all, I want to say this is a completely this is a spoiler review. We're just going to go and spoil everything for you.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you now, this is the lowest rated episode of this series at a 7 on IMDb, which is the lowest episode rated since, I'm just having a look through, probably season 5. It might even be the lowest rated episode ever on Game of Thrones. Which
the Bad Pussy episode from season 5.
I'm just having a look. Season 5. I'm looking for that episode. Oh my god, this episode is rated lower than that. This might be the lowest rated episode of Game of Thrones. I'm just going to check that.
Absolutely astounds me, and I don't know why.
A lot of people, and this is immediately spoiling the ending, but a lot of people hated the fact that the dragons were meant to be very difficult to take down with the giant arrows, the ballasts, but it went down in one hit. That's what people were complaining about.
It was 3 hits, let's be fair. It was 3 hits and one.
And a lot of people also complaining about the different character moments and stuff like that, the different character motivations from the episode, and just the general fast-pacedness. But that's come with this series. Anyway, it is Chris. It is the lowest rated episode by 1 entire point on IMDb.
That astounds me. Honestly, I think this was one of the strongest, and I don't know whether this is a case of that season 7 was so bad. Last week's was so bad, so anything that wasn't last week's episode is instantly good.
Well, here's the thing, though, Chris. Like, people liked last episode. I just want to say, people did like last episode. But
I've seen people very torn on it, though.
Because it's the final episode, and this is the first episode this series that has felt like a proper Game of Thrones episode. Yeah. It has a small amount of action, the tiniest amount of action. It has a beloved character death. It has high-tension
political
talking,
intrigue,
people plotting behind each other's backs. There's even an open discussion about treason, which was really good to see Varys coming back into the game. We'll get into that in a bit. But small character moments, and that's the biggest thing about Game of Thrones. It is all about those small character moments. And maybe people are voting it down because Game of Thrones has become a lot bigger than it initially started off with. In the first few series, it obviously went off the books, so it was able to follow those very quickly. But throughout the series, it's having to one-up itself to keep itself on top of the game. And maybe because it took a step down and actually played it like it was a proper Game of Thrones episode, if this episode was in series 1, 2, or 3, or 4, it would be rated one of the highest episodes. I mean, the shock value of one of the dragon's deaths, the shock value of a major character death as well to go along with that, the political intrigue, everything that goes into this episode makes it seem like it should be an amazingly reviewed episode, a really high-rated episode. And I loved it as one of those. But the fact of the matter is, with the Game of Thrones audience where it is right now, it's so mainstream that everyone wants it to be balls-out action. Like, every single scene needs to have a death or needs to have, like, a fist fight, or there needs to be shouting at each other. There can't be any quiet moments. There can't be any small talking intrigue. You can't have any politics because it's the end of the game. But this episode did the perfect thing of setting up the end of the game and carrying it through into that.
What I really liked about this episode was its structure, and a lot of people might complain about that. I think that following last week, and I don't want to make this a review on last week's episode, I do actually want to go back to some comments, though, that we had on the last episode just in a second. I think last week did divide a lot of people. I've seen a lot of videos in my subscription box, Game of Thrones analysis that last week kind of killed Game of Thrones dead, wasted plot point, everything like that. I think it is going to divide a lot of people. You're going to have the fans that prefer this kind of episode, like the political intrigue, as we mentioned, classic Game of Thrones, and then you're going to have people that liked that magic and supernatural stuff and what it was building to, which effectively has now been wiped out for all intents and purposes. I really like this episode, and I like that it's structured in a very, very clear, to the point where there's an actual cut to black in this episode. 2-act structure. You have your northern segment, as you said earlier, and your southern segment, and I think both feed into each other very well. I've seen a lot of people be very critical to the first half, saying it's very slow, meandering, doesn't really go anywhere, and we're still kind of dicking around in Winterfell. But after everything that went down, I think this would be a discredit to the episode if we didn't spend enough time there. And I'm actually very glad that we did get a sort of another final send-off to all these characters that died in the previous episode.
I will say, though, if there was one episode that possibly needed it to be I can't believe I'm saying this, 2-parter episode, that battle probably should have been the one that was given more time. Being the biggest battle that they've been building up to from the first scene of the series, before Cersei's introduced, before anyone else is introduced, as the first villain, the first thing that they should fight, that episode maybe should have been given a little bit more time, believe it or not. And whether that means more build up to that fight, maybe one extra episode beforehand with the build up, the tension of it happening, and then maybe ending the episode with them realizing that they have to close a gate and sacrifice half the army's lives and stuff like that. That would have been a good end, and then actually have the fight properly done for the second episode.
I'm kind of worried now for the ending. I'm not going to lie. I know that we've got 2 episodes left. I don't know if they're slightly longer. Like this episode was 1 hour and 20 minutes, so about 2 hours 40 in total if we're going with that running time. I don't know if that's enough time to clear everything up, and we'll get into it later.
I don't think it will clear everything up. I think what we can all say is that whatever happens at the end of the Game of Thrones, there will be an aftermath, and they will have to continue the series somehow. Maybe they give it a time jump and do it like with the characters who are alive at the end being the same age as Robert Baratheon and doing a future series. Or maybe they do go into the past with their sequels. They've got so much room to do sequels and prequels. I know it's easy because there's so much lore into what happens before the Game of Thrones. But there is always that option to not wrap it neatly into a nice bow. And I don't think it should.
I don't think it should do that. I think this should be its self-contained story. I'm not opposed to an eventual series set after this, many, many years later. I'm not opposed to that at all. But I don't think we should rely on that, which is my fears surrounding the Night King. In that essentially we have no characterization, but oh wait, we've got a prequel series coming out called The Long Night. Maybe that's going to go into his history more. I don't like that short-changing what we're actually getting this season and the story that this is telling for a possible money-making prequel or sequel series. I don't like that. We've got a lot to go in through in this episode.
And we've got to go
very, very quickly. I want to go through the comments from last week. We had one from Claudia. She's currently in the comments now. She's congratulated us on our 4-year anniversary. Thank you very much. She's put, okay, my question to you guys is this. Given that the Hound survived and that he didn't get Beric's sword, not sure if he can still retrieve it at all, how the hell is he supposed to be his brother in Clegane happens? I wonder if he loses and Arya avenges him, since they seem to want to give Arya all the cool scenes, or if the Mountain kills Arya and that's what gives the Hound the will to successfully defeat his brother. I want that battle so much, but now I really don't know how the Hound is going to win, if at all. What do you guys think?
I'll go ahead and say this now. That would be powerful if Arya dies. I think that would be one of the biggest shocks to the series, like absolutely humongous. That would be a top tier death, possibly the highest tier of death that we've had in the show since opening series with Ned Stark. I don't think you could probably top Arya being one of the integral characters from the first series who has been in almost every single episode of this series all the way throughout. That would be an intense scene, seeing the Hound go feral over the death of someone who he actually cares about. Or maybe the Hound will die protecting Arya from the Mountain, and this time she'll stay with him as he passes instead of robbing him and leaving him to die. Either way, I feel like Grey Worm's going to have a pitch in this fight. Maybe it's going to be a tag team fight between Grey Worm and the Hound trying to face off against the Mountain. I'll be honest, as long as there's air horns, I don't care.
For me, I really hope they start making Arya a thing now. That really pissed me off from last week. If they kind of repeat that plot point where she's just sort of systematically killing every key player, I don't want that to happen. It would be cool motivation if she did die. I mean, judging from something she does in this episode, a character decision, a direction they're going with the character, she really doesn't have a lot going for her now. She's kind of done what she was meant to do, and now that's it. So essentially, you could wipe out the character. We also need to look at the last of the title of this episode, The Last of the Starks. Now, I know that's literal in that Arya has become no one. Sansa's married and everything like that. Jon Snow's Aegon Targaryen. But there could be more to that. Like, Bran could become the last of the Starks by
no. Bran is not the last of the Starks. I think in this episode it implies that Sansa is the last of the Starks.
Yeah,
because Bran is the three-eyed raven. He's no longer a Stark. Jon is now a Targaryen. Arya is no one. She's the only person who's actually still a Stark.
Yeah. Who knows? We've got one more question as well, but I'll get to that at the very end because unless you want to go into it now, because it is regarding last week's episode.
It's regarding last week's episode. We'll do it now. Then we'll do it now.
Okay. So my questions are: when the Night King walked up to Bran, they seemed to share a moment. Do you think his story is truly over? For me, no. I think they're probably going to go into it a lot in the prequel series. For better or worse, I don't know, and I don't know if that's even going to reinforce Game of Thrones. Once you watch the prequel series first and then go into Game of Thrones, I still think it's going to be a very disappointing ending to that character. There's also another question here regarding if we think that Cersei will use the rest of the wildfire that they've stored in the city to burn everyone so that no one gets to the throne, even if she has to die alongside it.
I don't think that story of the Night King or the White Walkers is over. I think we haven't seen the last scene of Tormund from this series. That's all I'm going to say. I'll elaborate on in a bit, but I feel like maybe they'll bring it full circle and close the series the same way it opened. Because I just don't think that they could kill off a character like that and just leave it like that. I don't think they would. Okay, we get onto the episode, and as per usual, we start at the very most northern part of the map and work our way downwards, which in fact is actually really easy for this episode.
So easy.
For the first time this series,
they've spoiled us. They've spoiled us this series. Like they've either focused on one location or they've very clearly laid it out for us. It's perfect.
Well, obviously, D&D, they watch this show and they've been seeing that we've been struggling with bouncing between plot points on the map, and they finally went, you know what, we'll give Cinema Savvy a break. You know, it is their 4th year anniversary. So we'll start at the most northern point of the map. We'll end in King's Landing. And just to add to that, we'll do it in chronological order, which makes it so much easier. So the opening scene is remembering the dead. You have all the people who have fallen during the battle, like laying there on pyres. They're being sent off by the people who they had a connection with. So Sam is with Dolorous Ed. Daenerys is with Jorah. Jon is with Lady Mormont. Theon with Sansa, and they all are able to. And Arya and Beric Dondarrion. They're all able to light their pyres and almost remember them in that way. Remember the characters. For us viewing audiences, this scene is key because we actually find out who died if it wasn't clear in the last episode.
Yeah, absolutely. For my purposes there. I really like that they took their time with this. It was a very slow, methodical scene. It was that saying goodbye to the characters officially alongside the characters in the show. And honestly, I thought it was the best bit of acting that Kit Harington's done in a long time in the TV show when he did that speech. His voice and everything like that, he really did sort of harken back to Sean Bean in that moment as Warden of the North, and I loved it.
But the big question here is, would it have been better if the speech ended with Daenerys stepping up, crying her eyes out, and just weeping out at Dracarys?
So here was the thing. I was watching this, and I know they've got to like tenderly light all the funeral pyres, but they have got a dragon there. Hell, they've got two dragons.
All
there.
I was thinking was just Danny just like Dracarys. Then just
maybe that would have rubbed the Northmen up a little bit of the wrong way, I guess. But I did think that did creep into my mind. So the mass celebrations. So after all that sorrow is done, we finally get time for drinking, fucking, and everything that Game of Thrones did in season 1. Need to give a shout out to the mysterious coffee cup which has surfaced online, which I thought was a Photoshop. I thought it was an amazing Photoshop joke. A few article searches later, it's legit.
Not only that, but Daenerys, or at least the actress Emilia Clarke, is getting the blame when actually it is Sansa's. It is Sophie Turner's coffee cup, as seen in another photo that she left on set.
She is
So
the
it
culprit.
is Sansa. It is Sansa just trying to get at Daenerys, isn't it?
Am I? I mean, if that is the intention, like it's the greatest bit of viral marketing, or can you even call it viral marketing? Whatever it happens to be.
No
It's
idea.
the greatest bit of whatever it is I've ever seen.
Imagine if Starbucks actually paid for them to have it in the scene, knowing that they'd get a little bit of slack for it.
Well, I mean, season 7, right? We had Ed Sheeran that muscled his way into the series. So
yeah, that's
kind of
Ed Sheeran muscled his way into the series purely because Macy Williams is a massive Ed Sheeran fan and asked for him to be on set. And he was in a scene which actually he wasn't that bad in, and it actually added relevance to the plot. So they managed to get around that right. Coffee cup, however, in a place where only beer and wine is drank. I mean, what's happening with that?
When I first watched it, like obviously you're meant to be focusing on like Daenerys' expression, everything like that. Your eyes are immediately drawn to like the actor's expression and what's going on there. But I did clock it, but I thought it was a beer on the table. As it's still pretty dark, it's still very sort of naturally lit. I thought it was the head of a beer. I thought it was like the foam on top of a glass of beer.
No.
It was amazing, and I kind of love stuff like this. I compared it to
caramel macchiato, Chris.
to cappuccino. We'll talk about that later. No, I mean we're in a show here with like dragons and smoke being queefed out of a vagina in season 2. Like, is it out of the realm of possibility to have a Starbucks at Winterfell?
They have been so tight on the plot and the watch, like people's watches and stuff like that. Like no cars being seen in the backgrounds. They've been so tight on that for all of the series, and it's just one scene where it slips up.
I just think it's amazing that, maybe it's a budgetary thing, right? Like last episode, they clearly pissed all their budget away on episode 3 to the point where they had to cut to black like they did in season 1 and season 2 to skirt over a battle. They can't afford to like digitally erase coffee cups now, Tate. Like, come on. Like,
I know.
It's not like this is the highest budget for like TV shows.
Maybe this is Starbucks saying we're going to start selling ale.
I just thought it was funny. I do kind of hope they clear it up for the Blu-ray release, but how...
Here is the question. Did they write all of Daenerys' names on the coffee cup? Daenerys of the House Targaryen.
No, it's got Sansa's name on it, like hastily crossed out, and then Daenerys written crudely underneath. I do kind of hope they get rid of it for the Blu-ray release, but I did think it was hilarious. And as people have said in the comments, clearly someone's losing their job over that.
Oh, of course they are. We then have a scene which is probably the fastest fall from grace I've ever seen in the show's history. Over the space of about a minute. So first of all, we have Gendry being called out by Daenerys. Daenerys is like, you're a Baratheon's son, aren't you? And he's just shitting himself. Yeah. You can see it in his eyes. He's like, fuck. But he's heralded as a hero. He helped in 2 of the biggest fights, and he is now being given Storm's End and being heralded as Lord Gendry Baratheon. So he's been legitimized, which is a big moment for that character. And of course, the first thing he's going to do is he's going to go to Arya, and he wanted to find Arya anyway. And now that he's been legitimized, I mean, it's been building for the series and series and series that Arya and Gendry should be a couple. It should happen. Arya should look through the whole thing of I never wanted to be a lady because she's finally found someone who she can be a lady with, and it would follow her perfect character arc. And suddenly they go, nah, you're right, mate.
He got epically friend-zoned. He probably got more friend-zoned than Jorah Mormont the entire 8-series run of his character.
That was 8 series rolled into one sentence, wasn't it?
It was horrible because I was cringing because, I mean, not to the point where, well, I hope we haven't hastily proposed to someone like this, but we've all been in situations like that, man, where you're like, like this could be a thing, let's do it. It's like, nah, mate. Yeah, I mean, I guess we knew it was coming. What I will say is, though, and this is going to jump forward a little bit to a moment that I've been shipping for ages. We'll talk more about it later. We get to see an Arya sex scene in, like, what was that, episode 2?
Yeah.
We saw that. But we don't get to see a key one. That felt pointless to me, and we talked about that in our episode 2 discussion. There is a moment in this episode where they should have shown one, which would have played into character a lot more and would have been a really touching moment, and they didn't. I'm sure a lot of Arya fans are pleased about this. A lot of people didn't like the sex scene with Gendry. They said it was out of character for her. this is right back to her character now. This is like a course
Yeah.
correction for the character. If you did fear she was just going to become like a good waifu.
I will say one thing though. Game of Thrones has got a lot more tame as the seasons have gone on. First series was tits out, dicks out. This series has been very much. It might as well be a U-rated film at this point.
Yeah, I mean, to the point where you have to have CGI side boob, right?
I swear, holding hands has been the worst thing I've seen this series.
Bit of ankle for the lads.
Oh boy, Chris, calm down, calm down. This is a Christian YouTube channel. Come on now.
There is also I don't even know if we've got it on the list here, but we won't skip we won't skip ahead that much so far. We still need to talk about Tormund right now, explaining why Jon should be king. This is almost like a King in the North moment again, which he's technically already had, but it's kind of reinforcing that. As someone, I think it was Claudia earlier mentioned that Emilia Clarke kind of killed it this episode. Now, whilst I won't go to that extent, like I didn't think she was great, I never will think she's great, but I do love what they're doing with her character. This is the most interesting her character's ever been since the beginning of the series, in my opinion. I love what they're doing. I love that they're building this sort of mad king facade to her that a lot of people who originally backed her are now backing away. We'll get to that more later, but
it has been building throughout the series, and
very well as well, like at a good pace.
So it's been kind of hinted at a couple of times with her Dracarys's not letting the Tarleys live. That built onto that. The way that she invaded through Westeros, what she attacked, what she went for. And it's been slowly being hinted at. And now that she's had this relationship with Jon, and now that that's starting to build as well, and she's now seeing what kind of a king he is, and what kind of a person he is, and how he's almost doing a better job without even trying. It's starting to make her question everything, and she still has the power. At this point in the episode, she still has 2 dragons. Whether she lets Jon ride on one of them or not, Daenerys could just turn around and just say Dracarys or eat him or something like that, and go for it from there. But she is definitely the person who feels like she holds the power, but definitely doesn't at the moment. Whether she thinks that she does or not, as soon as she found out that Jon was Aegon Targaryen, and was the true heir to the Iron Throne, that has thrown her, and that has rocked her, and you can see that in this episode. You can see how the Northerners love her, and Sansa said it very well 2 episodes ago when she said, what about the North? The Northerners won't follow a Southern Queen, a Southern King. They'll only follow the true King of the North. And it's that difficult level of politicism which Dany still hasn't wrapped her head around. Tyrion obviously understands it. Tyrion knows it. And he's been trying to bring Dany around to the idea that maybe you will have to work side by side instead of being a queen of all 7 kingdoms. And you can start to see, even in this episode, I mean, what happens towards the end of the episode will tip her over the edge, and I can fully expect next episode the entire city of King's Landing to be turned to ash, just like in the prophecy. But you can see those tendencies that she is the Mad Queen. She is starting to turn that way. And whether or not, I mean, we have that great scene with Jon and Dany discussing these family matters. And she says that she loves him, but the actions don't prove that. It's almost like she's testing the waters, seeing whether it works or not. And maybe she's starting to realize, well, even though I may think I love him, I don't think it's going to work. And maybe she's starting to think in the back of her head, if push comes to shove, I'll get a dragon on him or something.
I had many disappointments with episode 3, and one of the biggest ones that I had, amongst many, was the continuation of the Daenerys and Jon storyline from how episode 2 concluded. We get that standoff where, you know, he confesses to her who he really is. She immediately forgets about the love angle, and she immediately goes to, this guy has a claim to the throne. This guy is a threat. I need to get rid of this guy or find some kind of course correction. When we get to episode 3, we drop that completely. She swoops in at the last minute and saves him constantly, and we do kind of resurrect that love angle with this one as well. But you do get those seeds of doubts in her mind there as well, in that she's framing that love angle as a way to sway it back to her side, essentially, to sort of crush him, saying, you know, even that great line she has where he says that, you know, what's the right thing to do? She's like, I've just told you what the right thing is to do.
Yeah.
Drop it completely. Let us just carry on being a thing. Even though she knows that he's her nephew, she quite openly knows that. They both do. And that was kind of weird. They still do have that moment where I think
it's one of those things where they've already fallen in love. I mean, Daenerys obviously knows that the Targaryens of old did date their cousins and sisters and brothers.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that everyone's aware of the whole Jamie and Cersei thing.
But that line later in the episode where I think it's Tyrion who says, like, I don't think people up north shack up with their aunties. Yeah. They might not shack up with them, but they certainly snog their faces off as soon as they know. You know what I mean? I didn't like that angle at all. I think I don't think he should have done that. I think he should have just pulled away. She should have gone in for a kiss and he should have, like, recoiled or something like that. So I didn't like that angle to it. But I do like that they've now gone back to where episode 2 ended, and this felt like a more logical progression of that storyline than episode 3 did, which to me was a regression.
There's definitely some tension between them now, which will make it very interesting. And especially in that scene with Tormund, even though Tormund is leaving this episode, and maybe we'll see him in one of the final episodes, maybe he will travel south with Ghost just for the final battle. But the whole kind of him saying, that's why you're our king. And he's not just saying that about the single troops. And Tormund, I'm not sure if he's aware that Daenerys wants the biggest claim to the throne here or not. All that Tormund knows is that Jon is the person who's actually provided the action. He's the one who actually stood up to things. Daenerys kind of swept in and saved them in one of the situations. But Jon's been the one who's united different struggles. He's been the one who's been resurrected from the dead, something Dany hasn't done. So for Tormund, at least, he is completely convinced. And whether it's one person who shouts really loud, completely convincing, or only a few people in a small village convincing, that upsets Dany. That really does. And you can see that.
I mean, the closest thing that Daenerys has done to that was when she walked through the funeral pyre at the end of season 1. That's the closest. But even then, that's just because Targaryens in the show seem to have this, you know, resistance to fire and to extreme heat, or at least she certainly does. Jon Snow has actually come back from the dead, which is massive, which is huge. And he is truly a real threat, which we'll get onto later when we talk about Tyrion and Varys's machinations. We talk about tension, though. We're still getting that Sansa and Daenerys shade being thrown at each other, which is absolutely my favorite stuff this season.
I know, that coffee move was
that's
it thing.
That's it, man. It's escalated to real life now. It's personal. Sansa is easily, I've said this every episode, I think now, is easily in my top 3 favorite characters of this season. She's really come into her own, and I truly do believe her as that Lady of Winterfell role. I think she's epic. I think she's a really strong female leader.
She has her mum's bite now.
Yeah.
It's something she didn't used to have. But she's got that now. She has that sternness. And that really does come forward, especially in the scene which she has with the Hound, which I thought was a really nice moment. There are 2 moments in this episode, we'll move on to the second one in a bit, where Stark girls are able to make the Hound smile. And maybe he has finally found a house or a family to properly follow without being considered a mercenary. Maybe he has found at least 2 people in the world who he'd be willing to protect or at least call a friend. Because there's got to be a reason why he was fighting in the north.
Yeah.
Whether that was for Sansa or whether that was for Arya, there has to be a reason why he was up there. Otherwise, he would have fucked off and done his own thing. So he truly, whether he shows it or not, he has that sense that he has to still protect them.
We may as well talk about this now and then cycle back to the other big one we need to talk about. Sheila in the comments, I adored the scene with Sansa and the Hound. Absolutely. I love seeing these 2 together. It took me right back to season 2. And, you know, the Hound kind of has achieved his goal in that he did want to keep both Arya and Sansa alive. Almost like a father-daughter dynamic between them. And there's that nice moment in this episode where you can tell he kind of wishes he had have kept them innocent and, shrouded away from all this grief and sorrow and backstabbing in the world. But Sansa makes a great point that, she said, I would still have been a little bird. She may have not been here. There's a good chance that she would have died had she not have learned and adapted to the world that she's in. And you can kind of see that sorrow in the Hound's eyes, that they have almost become as hardened as he is. Certainly Arya has anyway. But there is also that, that kind of bond they have now because of that. They've gone through probably similar things. And I loved it, yeah. I'm glad that, and this is why I love this episode so much. It's exactly what you said. These character moments, like, you have all these fun, spectacles and battles and everything Game of Thrones, but to me Game of Thrones is about the characters and the dynamic between said characters. And I mean, this episode had it in spades, including the big thing we need to talk about now, the thing that filled my heart full of joy. And Tate, I called it. You didn't think it was
Tyrion and drinking? Is it Tyrion and drinking?
It is Tyrion and drinking, and seeing Tyrion and drinking always fills my heart with joy.
Absolutely. I think he's winning the all-time drinking on Game of Thrones thing by over 70 cups of wine or something stupid like that. I think Cersei's on number 2 with 20 odd. and he's on like 90 cups of wine,
And
drank throughout the series on screen.
We go back to that whole "I have never" thing from season 1, and that's why I like season 8. Not in a really like obtuse way. It's doing it very, very delicately, and it's a nice. You see how far the characters have come, essentially, and how far they've evolved from those same moments, those similar moments in season 1 to moments like this. But the results of said drinking game is perfect, and I'm really glad it happened. I've been wanting this to happen since season 2. It happened. I told you it would, Tate. I had faith. And the writers pulled through this one. Jaime and Brienne. Now, I've actually seen some people in the comments be very reviled at this and hate this decision. I'm glad that she chose Jaime over Tormund. Like, the whole Tormund and Brienne thing, it was fun that he was chasing her, that he got really depressed when she didn't go with him.
Oh my god, this
match.
episode has one of the best lines. I've been waiting for, I think it's something along the lines of, I've been waiting for this girl for ages, and some fucking southerner comes up and steals her from me. But, yes, I'm happy for the characters, and it suits the characters. I do think it's a bit weird that Jaime made her a knight 2 episodes before, and this seems like it was almost planned by him.
I can see that, and a lot of people have been saying that they don't like how they asked if she was a virgin, and then he kind of immediately wanted to get in her pants after that. I didn't see it as forced, though, because she kind of readily did it. There was no resistance there.
I'd say that she's been pining after Jaime for a long time now.
Exactly.
And I think it was in that moment he finally realized that she liked her, whether he was completely blinded by it or not. I think in that moment he finally understood, and he finally got it.
Brinsley says, because it was Brinsley I was referring to when he says that he didn't like it. He says, just to be clear, I like Jaime and Brienne together. I just thought that it was an awkward scene. I liked it, but I was just sort of cheering that it was happening when they kissed. I was like, yes! And I've never cheered at a kiss scene, I don't think, in my entire life. But I did here. Maybe at the end of Lord of the Rings, perhaps. They could have filmed it in a different way. Maybe if they filmed it with the same sort of passion that they did for Ygritte and Jon, for example, in was that season 3 or season 4?
Or sadly, maybe... Chris, it would have been great if they went down to the crypt.
Oh, I did it like on Ned Stark's tomb or something. Well, I mean, Jaime has fucked someone on a kid's tomb before with Joffrey, right?
Oh my god, imagine if he went up to the tower. Imagine, he's just like, this is my spot, you know?
Brinsley says they filmed it like a bad porno. I think, do you remember the Robb Stark and Talissa scene from season 2?
Can you absolutely imagine the string quartet or the house band in the background, just kind of proper Game of Thrones style, just playing themselves out with the Game of Thrones theme in the corner really slow and seductively?
No, dude, it needs to be like an awkward 70s Skinamax porn music in the background. Like, that's the only way to do it if you're going to do it. Like, do it all the way.
Look, I know that porn parodies exist of Game of Thrones, but I want like one of those really shitty parodies like they had in the mid-2000s, like superhero movie. Vampires Sucks. One of those proper awful ones, but of Game of Thrones.
They were so bad, they were good.
I want a hilariously bad Game of Thrones parody, if anyone wants to go out and make one.
There kind of is. I haven't seen this. Full disclosure to everyone watching the channel. I have not seen this. I've seen the trailer to it, and it looks hilarious. There is a porn parody called Game of Bones. The trailer is available on YouTube. You can go and watch it free of charge. It's hilarious. Part of me just wants to watch it because the trailer was so good. Brinsley says Jaime was like, it's hot in here, takes off clothes. Yeah, it was kind of awkward, I guess. I have to go back and watch it again to make sure. I was just pleased that it was happened. I guess my love for those two characters
I can't wait for Jaime to go into the whole like Austin Powers kind of speech, like, it's getting hot in here, baby. I'm starting to get proper randy.
I liked it. Fuck you guys. Like, I liked it. I thought it was a great moment.
So we move on from the scenes of the mass celebrations, and we move on to another moment of conflict between Daenerys and Sansa. And this is a rather large conflict, and it perfectly shows it. And I wanted to just say, I mean, it's a little bit of foreshadowing to what we're going to talk about in a bit, but Sansa was right. Sansa really is now the smartest person in the room. She has become that from the people that she's talked to and she's seen, even with battle strategy, something which Daenerys has gone into more battles than Sansa has. And Sansa was right with the Battle of the Bastards, with not rushing to Ramsay, not playing his game. Jon played his game, and that almost meant they lost the battle. And the only reason why they won was because Sansa planned in the help from the Vale. Like, Sansa, military strategist, is amazing. Like, her strategies are amazing, and her kind of game for the Game of Thrones is also phenomenal. She might actually be the strongest player at the moment, other than Cersei.
Mm-hmm.
She's the only person who's actually playing it right. But Daenerys is still this very kind of, you have a different opinion to me, therefore I'm going to go completely against it, even though Sansa's suggestion is way better. Mm-hmm. Let the soldiers rest. Cersei's forces, I mean, she isn't going to amass more. She's already got the Gone Company. She's already called up the banners. They're not going to build any more other than more defenses against the dragons. Actually letting the troops heal, letting the troops rest, having them on like the highest kind of levels of fighting and being completely alert would be the best for them now. It means that they can actually gain more forces. Like, it means that they can actually plan a little bit better. I mean, the plan for sieging King's Landing almost got thrown out the window immediately as soon as they actually get there. So I feel like at this point in time, people need to start listening to Sansa a lot more. A lot more.
Mm-hmm.
And Jon just bends the knee immediately.
This reminded me of, because in the books, you know, there's like the whole age difference between the characters compared to the show. Obviously, they wouldn't have been able to get away with a lot of the things that go down in the book if they kept the characters the same age. Daenerys in the book, if I recall, is about 10, 11, I think. And her kind of stomping her feet and acting like a petulant child in this episode, saying like, no, I want the city now. I want the throne now. We're going to march now. And I want it. And you promised you would help me. That did kind of take me back to how her character is in the book, kind of, in that kind of age. And she really has regressed from this very level-headed, compassionate leader, breaker of chains, as they say. And she's now ready to just like burn an entire city to the ground, just like her father did, or wanted to do, at least, in order to just get the throne. She is going to be the Queen of the Ashes, essentially, with nothing. And that's what she sees in her vision. You know, she sees the throne full of ash and everything, and maybe it will get to that stage. We don't know. But I did like how Sansa stepped up, and Arya as well. They went like, right, Jon, family intervention, family meeting.
I would have loved it if Jon went to the forest and he just saw a banner hanging from the tree that said intervention.
It literally was the greatest intervention ever, and I'm glad that it happened there and then. What I do find is hilarious, though, is how Daenerys swore him to secrecy. He immediately tells his sisters. It's like being back at high school, right? Like, you tell someone something before the afternoon is done. Everyone in the entire school knows. I'm sure everyone in Winterfell knows.
Varys said it perfectly. He said, how many people know? 8? Well, then it's information. It's no longer a secret. It's information now.
Can we talk about how awesome Tyrion and Varys were in this episode?
This is one of the greatest callbacks. These two have been playing the game since the very start, and we had those amazing moments in King's Landing, including Littlefinger, where the three of them would discuss things between them and scheme and connive behind their backs. Varys has a bigger role in the books because there's a plot with Dawn, and there's a lot that happens. You can read up about it online or go to Alt-Shift-X for that. But with like Varys and Tyrion, this is the first time I think since Series 5 where they've actually been talking together and scheming and almost having that kind of banter between them that keeps us coming back to their conversations. And I think both Varys and Tyrion have their own points for being right. I mean, they're openly discussing treason in public, and I saw that people were unhappy with that, talking to the king's advisor about treason right in front of him. But I think if you've watched through the series enough, both Tyrion and Varys, I swear they're the only two people who don't trust each other, but at the same time completely trust each other. You can tell that from them. They're able to share that information because they know that nothing's going to come of it. They're not going to go against each other's back because they've had such a big history, but they're willing to use that information for their own benefit. And Varys actually makes a very good point as to who is actually right for the throne here. Like, who should be the person who sits on the Iron Throne at the end? And Daenerys is that kind of character where you are starting to question it in the series. Yeah. I mean, if you're living in that universe and you're living out the life of the Game of Thrones, up until this point, you've immediately thought, okay, Daenerys is the one. Daenerys is the one who should sit on the throne. suddenly, as soon as this birth thing comes into it, and you see what Jon has done for the North, and you see what Jon has done for the realm with protecting it, it does make you question it, especially when Daenerys is making like more and more dangerous decisions. It is starting to be questioned, and it's a moment which comes to head in Dragonstone, where they have that conversation in the throne room, like they had conversations in the throne room in King's Landing in season 1 and 2, which makes it just for excellent TV, absolutely excellent watching. It's brilliant that they brought those kind of things back.
And this is what,
it makes me question why people didn't like the episode.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's what I was just going to bring up. That, as you said, like harkening back to those, deep, machinations and everything in season 1 between Littlefinger and Varys, and now we're getting it now again. Fantastic. And I'm glad that Varys has come back into the fold again. He has been, well, an extended extra essentially for the last few episodes. I really hope he gets more to do. Conleth Hill has been always phenomenal as Varys in season 1, and that still continues now. Tyrion has kind of become, and a lot of characters have said this, he's gone from the most intelligent character in the game to one of the most unintelligent characters.
But he's starting to gain that intelligence back, and we'll talk about that later on in the episode.
He is, and we do get a moment. I guess we can get onto it now. Claudia's raised a great point. I will bring that up in one of our topics in a second regarding the reveal to Sansa and Arya, but that kind of comes into it in a minute, so I'll discuss that. Bronn returns with crossbow in hand, and he corners Jaime and Tyrion. This was a great moment. Now, I did want to bring this point up to you because a lot of people might think that I'm being really critical of the character of Bronn here. Does anyone think that the writing for Bronn, kind of like Tormund, has just become really easy? It's just kind of throw the word cunt into a sentence and a few fucks here and there, and pricks and cocks, and then that's it. That's your dialogue for Bronn. Am I the only one who thinks that? I don't know.
I feel like at this stage, Bronn as a character feels like he's given up on it. He's just like, do you know what? I can't even be asked anymore. I'm just going to come out and say exactly what I want immediately, and that is what I'll get. And he is completely right in what he's saying, and we did kind of suspect this. Tyrion would offer double what he had. He's offered, is it twins, or is it the Reach, or something like that?
He wants Riverrun.
He's offered Riverrun.
He's offered Riverrun. He wants the Reach.
And he's given Highgarden, which I'll be honest it's meant to be in the Game of Thrones books. It is the most beautiful castle. It's one of the biggest, and it's the one with the area of most wealth. So he will become the Lord of Highgarden. And if you remember, House Tyrell was the richest house ahead of the Lannisters. They were the ones who were bringing the money into the war, and they were one of the most powerful houses from that settlement. So Bronn going there, that is a huge play for him. It's more than double of Riverrun. Riverrun's a tiny little settlement, which doesn't have strategically the best defenses, as they were sieged very easily. I would go ahead and say this now, that him getting Highgarden is like ×5 what he could have got. He will immediately become one of the most powerful lords in the Seven Kingdoms straight off the bat. So it's a fair deal given to him. It is a shame, however, that we might not see him for the rest of the series now, as his character said, "I'll come and find you at the end of the war."
I think that makes sense to his character, though. And maybe he'll show up last minute and say, like, I'm protecting my investment or something. But I do like that. I mean, Brinsley raises a great point here, but I don't see this as a fault of the scene. I see this as just a natural way that the character would play out. Brinsley says it was a mess scene. We knew he wasn't really going to kill anyone. I don't think that was the point, though. I think that the fact that he's still keeping them alive says a lot about his character. You know, he spent time with both Jaime and Tyrion. You can tell deep down he likes them. He's an opportunist, of course he is, but he's going to get his castle, and I think there will be that sort of, that friendship between him and Tyrion.
Do you reckon it's business first, friendship second? And he's got the business out of the way, and maybe he'll bring forward the friendship now. No,
because, I mean, if you remember, he saved Jaime's life in Season 7 during the dragon attack. He didn't have to do that. He didn't have to do that. I think he's a guy who's not very good about showing his feelings, even if it's a bromance between two brothers, I think that the friendship is there. I mean, of course it is. Otherwise, he was sent to kill them. Like, he's looking out for his own skin. He's looking out for his own future, which is fair enough. He is an opportunist, but I think he is that rogue with a heart of gold kind of thing. And I do think we'll see that come into the fold in the last episode, at least. We're going to see Bronn again. He's going to come back without a question of a doubt.
Yeah.
We needed to talk about a line actually earlier, which we know it's coming, whether it's going to be next episode or last episode. Clegane Bowl. People have been wanting this thing for a long time. It's going to happen. when the Hound says there's only one, this was earlier in the episode, there's only one thing that will make me happy, we all know what that is.
I might actually buy an air horn just to or an air horn app or something like that, which I can just spam on repeat when it gets to it. I feel like if Clegane Bowl is next episode, or even if it's on the final episode, and the entire final episode is just called Clegane Bowl, like fuck the Seven Kingdoms. Let's just say the Iron Throne's decided in the next episode, and the final episode is decide who's the winner of Clegane Bowl. That's the best way to end a Game of Thrones series. I would happily dedicate an entire episode of this review series just to Clegane Bowl, if you're willing to, Chris.
Oh, definitely. We need to do it. And we need to get like Mortal Kombat music playing. We need WWE commentators, like the whole 9 yards. And you know someone's going to edit it that way. And I hope they don't let us down, because that we talk about the White Walkers being bigged up. This has been bigged up since we learned of their past from season 1, even regardless if the Mountain's been recast 3 times at this point. Needs to happen, and it's going to happen, and that's kind of reinforced here with that moment that he spends with Arya. It's just nice to see them share a scene.
He just says there's only one thing that will make me happy in this world. I have unfinished business.
Yeah.
I just think he is just gonna walk in. He's gonna smash. Like he's just gonna like the Mountain's gonna open the door. He's gonna smash him in the face and he's just gonna say the line, "I am unfinished business." Crack his knuckles and then walk into it.
This would be if I was directing the episode, Tate, and tried to make it like an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie or something like that.
Every punch actually causes an explosion, a small one.
If there's one episode I wish that Michael Bay could direct, it would be that episode. And Megan Fox would just randomly be there.
Imagine the Hound riding a dragon.
Oh my god.
Sandor Clegane.
Flaming sword aloft.
Oh my god.
It would be like the fucking poster to heavy metal. It'd be awesome. So we move on to the next thing, and we've kind of talked about this a little bit, but I do want to go back to a previous statement that Claudia made. Jon telling the Starks the truth, Arya, Sansa, and I like that Bran is just kind of there being ever enigmatic as possible and saying it's your choice if you want to say it or not. Claudia said that she doesn't like that the camera cuts away before we see Arya and Sansa's reaction to...
We know exactly what their reaction is going to be. We know exactly what's going to be said.
That brings me on to my next point and our next topic of discussion, which I thought was a fantastic scene as well. When Sansa tells Tyrion, again, we don't see it blatantly, but she does reinforce that idea of what if there's another. I think you get it all. I think you get that reaction perfectly from Sophie Turner's performance on the wall, where she's fighting back tears, and you can tell that she really wants to say it, but she doesn't say it directly.
Yeah.
I think, you know, if we'd have got their reaction there, you're just essentially repeating the same moment again when you get that revelation with her and Tyrion. And I like that we're having Sansa and Tyrion spend more time with each other. I was right about Brienne and Jaime. Can I be right about Tyrion and Sansa? I hope I am when we get to the end of this season.
I ship them. I hope so as well. I really do. Whether it will actually work out or not, who knows?
We'll find out, hopefully.
Maybe if Jon becomes king, maybe Tyrion will be Warden of the North.
That's true. And the thing is, like, when she said last, and this is what's giving me hope, where she said it would never work out between us because of Daenerys.
Yeah.
That's not a flat out, this will never work.
So what she's hinting at is she wants Daenerys dead so she can finally get it on with the dwarf.
So, Tyrion, we never exactly consummated that marriage, did we? So let's get down to business. Let's move on. That's an image for like everyone watching.
This is the moment where Game of Thrones brings back like absolute full frontal nudity, full sex scenes. Like,
is Game of Thrones going? Have you seen Sausage Party? Right.
Yes. That's how it's going to end.
Yeah. In the Great Hall of Winterfell. That's how I want it to end. That's how it's going to end. Make it happen, D&D. Come on, you can do it. Okay.
So
next scene.
We have the next scene, which is the goodbyes. I think Jon says goodbye now to 2 characters who've been with him for a majority of the series. The first goodbye he does is with Tormund, where he leaves him with Ghost. And I think a lot of people have hated this moment from the episode because he doesn't have a proper farewell with Ghost.
I agree with that. I was hoping that he was going to go.
I think it makes sense, though. It does make sense. And people are going, oh my God, why is he not saying goodbye to the dog? Go hug the dog and shit like that. It is him abandoning the Stark ideology. It's him abandoning his Starkhood and becoming Aegon Targaryen in that one scene. That was it. That was the moment he became Aegon Targaryen. In that one moment where instead of saying goodbye to the wolf that has kept him alive, has been his buddy side by side, the sigil of the Starks, he abandons that. He tells it to move on, and that is the moment. So people saying it was a terrible scene and stuff like that, actually, it's one of the cleverest scenes in the entire series.
Claudia in the comments says, Tate is so cold.
No, fuck that. It's Game of Thrones. Characters die, animals get abandoned, animals get left. This is the moment where Jon becomes Aegon Targaryen. This is the moment where he takes that name. This is the moment where he fully accepts it. This is him saying goodbye to the Stark home. This is him saying goodbye to his Starkhood. Whether it's been a friend who's been with him throughout the entire series or not, that perfectly encapsulates that. And I mean, people suggesting, oh, but it's the cute dog. Look, this is Game of Thrones. We've seen all of the other dogs being brutally murdered. Like, this is a dog being given a happy ending. Just be happy with the fact that it wasn't killed.
Brinsley says, like, Ghost going into the north to roam free is a good ending for a direwolf. I agree. I would have liked to have seen a little bit of a parting goodbye between the two. But one of my biggest problems with Game of Thrones in general is, for the most part, they've just completely dropped that whole direwolf thing. We haven't seen Ghost for episodes, and then you randomly just see him in the background in, like, episode 2 or 3, was it? A little bit in the battle. Had they have maintained that love and that connection like they do in the books, I mean, Ghost is pretty much ever present in the books, as are all the direwolves while they're still alive. Had the show have maintained that and that connection between the two, I think that a goodbye would have been necessary. The fact that we haven't seen the two together for such a long time, and they've kind of dropped the direwolves here and there sparingly, they're almost been like cameos, really.
Yeah.
Didn't really bother me that we didn't get a goodbye. I would have liked one, but I can absolutely see what you're saying, and I think that's a really good way to read into the scene. I think we just have a lot of dog lovers out there, myself included, so that's probably why. So a big revelation here. Sam and Gilly say that she's expecting another baby, and that it's a really nice moment, actually, when Jon says, like, I hope you have a girl. That was pretty nice. Do you think we're going to see them again? If we don't see them again, I'm not going to be fussed, because that is quite a nice ending.
I think that's his ending for the character. He's served his plot. He has provided the history. He's perfectly serviced the plot. I'm assuming he said he was going back to Old Town, or I think he's saying he was possibly staying at Winterfell. Whatever happens now, he can't actually add to the plot for the end game. He can't add to it even slightly. He has nothing left to give, but he's given so much to the series, and it was a fitting farewell to the character. He is one of the few people who has been given a happy ending in Game of Thrones. Saying that, Tormund is not going to have a happy ending. Tormund's going to go north, and I feel like it's going to have the opening scene repeated again, but Tormund be involved in it. Mm-hmm. I don't think the White Walkers are dead, fully dead. I mean, the production team, the cast, won't comment on whether they're alive or not. But killing the Night King, who's to say the Night King was the only Night King? Who's to say that there aren't White Walkers in the North who weren't controlled by the Night King? I mean, there must have been a contingency plan. There must have been some other form. It couldn't have been him going all out into the Seven Kingdoms and just rampaging. It's one of those kind of things where when you have a big bad like that, you cannot kill them off just like that. I feel like maybe the series ends with it repeating in that sense, and having that first scene from the first episode of people being hunted down in the woods by the White Walkers once again.
Earlier in the comments, Lucas McManus, who's watched a bunch of our shows, left a comment. He says, also in an interview with the showrunners I saw, the showrunners said that they refused to answer whether the White Walkers are truly gone. Hopefully they do something interesting with that. That could be them just evading that they don't want to give spoilers. They want to keep it open to interpretation. I really hope you're right, but at this point, it seems pretty final, and maybe that's what they want us to think, but we'll have to wait and see. I'm not going to get my hopes up, though, to see them again. I think they're gone, personally, for me anyway. So the last thing we need to talk about before the second act, not just before the second act. Jaime chooses Cersei, and as you've written, but chooses her for what? This really, really hit me hard, and I like that it's almost like Jaime's confession, almost.
I don't think it's a confession. And I put it there for that because everyone kind of assumes that Jaime's going back to fall in love with Cersei again, try and win her back. It's not happening. It's not happening. Jaime understands what has happened. He understands how Cersei works, and he understands that the war won't be won until she's dead.
Yeah.
He has chosen his side, but he knows that if Brienne follows him down to King's Landing with the intention of killing Cersei, Brienne's going to be killed on the spot.
This is something he's got to do, and he's got to do alone.
He kind of almost lied to her. He said he did everything for Cersei, and now he's going to basically kill Cersei.
Yeah.
And this is, I think maybe whether he dies or not, I think he's given up on Cersei now. I think he's made up his mind. I think he's on Brienne's side now. I think he's finally happy. And Tyrion even says that. I'm so happy to see you finally happy.
But happiness never lasts in Game of Thrones, as we know. And I don't think Jaime's going to make it through to the end, which is going to kill me.
I hope he does. But at the same time, I think that him going down to King's Landing is his destiny. Him killing Cersei is his destiny. But he couldn't take Brienne along for the ride because he knew that she would get killed in the process. And I think he's finally found something which is actually worth fighting for. Something more than fighting for living. He is fighting for something that is living.
You've seen Moulin Rouge, right? Nicole Kidman, Ewan McGregor movie. It's almost like that moment where he says, hurt him to save him, but reversed here. He's hit her with that, all the terrible things he's done in the past in order for her to stay there and to not love him, to not get too connected to him, exactly for the reason you just said, that so that she doesn't follow him, so that he doesn't put her in harm's way. This is something that Jaime needs to do. As Cersei said earlier, they came into the world together, they shared a womb with each other, they belong together. If he's got to kill her, if she's got to die, he's got to be the one to do it. It's got to be at his hands or hand. That's also been referenced. That's also been teased in season 7, and I hope it happens. He essentially has a way into the capital. However, we do have to remember that she did send Bronn out to kill mostly Tyrion, but also I think that Jaime was grouped in.
I think the word used was brothers. Treasonous brothers.
Yeah. I think Jaime's going to get to the city. I think that he's going to be the one to kill Euron. And then I think he's going to get to Cersei after that. However, I don't know if it's...
Maybe Cersei played an even smarter move. She knows that Bronn's a mercenary. She knows that Bronn does things not for Cersei, but for Tyrion and for Jaime. So knowing that Tyrion and Jaime were up in the north, out of the way, and knowing that Bronn was an opportunist and would fight for whatever side was winning, I think she wanted to get Bronn out of the capital so that Bronn didn't just kill her on the spot as soon as things went bad. So maybe she gave him the motivation to basically get him out of the situation so that she couldn't be assassinated easy.
Definitely.
Maybe that was Cersei's smart move.
I think Jaime is definitely out of this series, though, because to me, him getting with Brienne, him confessing all these things to her, that's kind of him clearing his conscience now. He's found a place where he's truly happy, but Cersei is kind of like that ball and chain that's there. It's that cancer that's still growing inside him. He can't truly be free until she's gone. But unfortunately, I think he's going to die in the process, although he's going to die accomplishing his goal, essentially, and going out of this world.
So we move down to Dragonstone. Now, there are a couple of things which do happen at Dragonstone.
Is it Dragonstone?
This is kind of the Dragonstone area. It's between Dragonstone and King's Landing. We've already talked about the thing that actually happens in Dragonstone, which is Tyrion and Varys having their chat. And next episode, Daenerys, I believe, returns to Dragonstone. So we'll see a little bit more of Dragonstone in the next episode.
I didn't realise they were at Dragonstone. I thought they were
at
still at Winterfell.
They were at Dragonstone, Tyrion and Varys, because you see them in the throne room.
Okay.
But Euron ex machina. Euron comes in for the second time this series, sneaking up on ships. Now, we know that he is a master sailor, master pirate. So that's completely believable. It is completely believable. And no, because people have been complaining about that as well, which I think is completely uncalled for, because everyone's already seen that he is that kind of person that knows the seas, knows a way to hide within plain sight in the ocean and stuff like that.
I don't think you can hide that well, dude, when you've got an armada right in front, head on, oncoming of Daenerys on a dragon who has full
fair
vantage.
enough. But he is able to take down a dragon, and this is where a lot of book readers and a lot of people tuned out, because dragons are meant to be those ballasts, ballistas, ballistas, the giant arrows. In the books, it says a full-grown dragon, it will take like 10 to take one down. 10 well-aimed shots or something like that. Or it takes a few to even scratch a dragon. In this episode, I mean, a dragon is taken down in 3 very well aimed shots immediately.
I can kind of agree. I mean, if you are a hardcore book fan, absolutely. I mean, they could have done it better if they had have shot, because when they aim for Drogon as well, you see like 20 ballistas coming for that thing, and somehow due to plot armor, it's just able to easily navigate between them all. For the second time, why do they never go for the plot-centric dragon? Why do they never go for the dragon with plot-central characters on it? Why do they always go for the other one? The Night King did it with Viserion. Euron did it with this one, Rhaegal. I didn't really have a problem with it. I mean, if you're a hardcore book fan and it says specifically in the text it takes a lot to bring a dragon down, fair enough. They could have got around it if they had have shot like 10 and they all like wedged into it like a dragon pincushion, maybe. They could have got away with it. That this caught me completely off guard. And this is why I love this episode, like not only because of the great character moments before, but a moment that could genuinely shock me. And not in a really like arbitrary way, like the death of the Night King in episode 3. This genuinely shocked me, and I thought it was done very well. When it went through its throat and like torrents of blood are just coming out, my friend still thinks that Rhaegal's alive. I'm like, nah, mate, nah. And I think partially the reason, maybe subconsciously as well, is because, and again, I've got to go back to Middle Earth, I'm sorry, the Hobbit trilogy, they set up that, you know, in the books, the Black Arrow is literally just a regular bow and arrow, essentially. But in the movies, he wanted to make the Black Arrow a ballista bolt because he thinks that to take down a dragon, you'd need an arrow of considerable proportionate size to the actual dragon itself.
Yeah.
So you do have moments in The Hobbit where they are firing ballista bolts at the dragon and look like they could do serious damage to it if they did hit the dragon. So maybe my mind was cast back to that and I didn't have a problem with it. But Brinsley hates it in the comments. He hates that Rhaegal was taken out so easily. It's funny how earlier Jon Snow has a line of, we need to give Rhaegal time to heal. And then not 20 minutes later in the episode, he's taking 3 ballista bolts like an absolute champ. I liked it. I liked the moment. It was genuinely shocking. Now, I will say, though, this is the moment of the episode where more problems did creep in for me. I thought the first act was completely solid. It was this second act where I'm now going to have some problems with the episode. So it wasn't a perfect episode. It was a very good episode and I enjoyed it, but I did have some problems with it. Namely the fact that the showrunners have kind of pissed away all their budget in episode 3 on the battle, which I thought was very egregious.
I will say that I did quite like the moment where Tyrion was kind of trying to escape the ship and he sees these bolts flying through and collecting people and stuff like that. It didn't take much CGI-wise, but it was enough to kind of understand the scene and understand the situation.
Brinsley's just put, look how they massacred my boy. Which is amazing.
But Missandei is captured.
Can we talk about that briefly? Like this is arguably my biggest thing that I have a problem with. So we cut to black because we don't have budget to show the whole Armada attack and everything. That's fair enough. Why would they capture Missandei? Like, we need to be willing to admit that Missandei is the sole survivor of the entire Armada attack, which I don't believe at all, for a start. But also, did they know who Missandei was? Like, why keep her alive? Because ultimately how the episode ends anyway, it seems like the only reason...
I can perfectly explain this, Chris. It's very easy, and it's actually Cersei playing mind games with everyone. Basically, she wanted to keep her alive. She always intended to execute her just because she wanted to piss off Daenerys, because she knows that when Daenerys gets pissed off, she makes rash decisions. It's what happened in the Battle of the Spoils of War. It's what she's heard about from all the spies telling her the information from across the seas. When she gets pissed off, when she gets angry, when she throws a tantrum, she makes rash decisions which are terrible for her tactically. I mean, Cersei completely understands that the siege would be detrimental to her, and Cersei wouldn't last a few weeks. But she has a chance if Daenerys lunges in. She has a chance of the people being on her side. She has a chance of at least ruining it for Daenerys in that sense. Mm-hmm. If you kill Missandei and just leave her in the water or have her never be found, then what does it mean? She's lost one of her advisors. We don't know if she's dead or alive. There'll be no motivation there. Having her executed in front of Daenerys, having her stood in front of her and having her head lobbed off, that will make Daenerys mad. That will just make Daenerys emotional and act on rash decisions.
Would she have,
That's what Cersei wanted.
wouldn't that have had the same effect if she'd have just killed them in the Armada, though?
I don't think so. Daenerys wasn't there. It's very different. If you see one of your best friends being killed in front of you, does that fill you with anger or does that fill you with sadness? If you hear about one of your best friends being killed on the route to the actual thing, she would feel more sad, less angry. Seeing her closest advisor being decapitated, being beheaded in front of her, would make Daenerys so angry and act on just the worst decisions possible. And that is what Cersei does best. She plays the mind games. She gets into people's heads, and it works.
I can see that. That's fair enough. I'll concede that point. I do think it was a huge missed opportunity that we didn't see the capture and that we did cut to black. I think you had to, I'm all for like filling in the blanks and everything like that, but I do think that that was integral and they should have showed that. And I think they could have shown that very easily, even if they'd have cut to black and a few quick shots of her being kidnapped, maybe. I think that would have been better, definitely. Claudia says that, yes, Cersei does know of Missandei. When they showed the white to Cersei, Missandei was there, and Brinsley says, I guess she would have just known that she was close to Daenerys as an advisor. That's fair enough. I know that we only have a brief amount of time, but we do need to talk about another big problem that I have. Cersei's whole before I kill you, Mr. Bond moment. She has got all of her enemies in front of her, bar Jon Snow, perhaps, and the people of the North, but everyone integral there. She's even got fucking Drogon there. The dragon is right there, and he's doing sweet FA. Daenerys is there. You've got a handful of Unsullied, and Cersei's got like 4 or 5 ballista cannons pointed right at them. There is no escape for these guys. They could all be dead. Please explain to me the point of keeping them alive. What is in it for Cersei to keep these guys alive? These are the threats. They have a dragon. They're right at the gates there. And I'm sorry, but I don't believe that it's in Cersei's character to let them live. At this point, sorry, I'll just finish off this point. I'll pass it to you. If you're going with it, like Daenerys makes an argument earlier in the episode that, well, at least we didn't engage them first, so the mercy is still on our side and people will see that we didn't want bloodshed. Cersei doesn't care about that, and she's openly assaulted them in the field with the ships and took down the dragon and laid waste to all of their fleet. What's to stop her from finishing the job right now? It's on the very outskirts of the city. Crush your enemies there. Then you've just got to worry about Jon Snow and the Northern forces. That's it. I don't believe... From what we've seen Cersei do, blowing up the High Sparrow and everything like that, the Great Sept, and being completely merciless throughout pretty much every single season, I don't believe that she would keep these key players involved. I don't.
I'm going to offer a scene adjustment, shall we say?
You're good at these.
Whether it'll have an effect on the series or not, I think the scene should have played out perfectly as it did. I think the scene should have played out absolutely how it did, with one exception. After Missandei gets beheaded, Tyrion kind of looks away like he's failed the mission. I would have loved Cersei to just say knock or something like that, or draw, and suddenly Tyrion's in a shitty situation. The audience would be absolutely shocked because they know shit. Tyrion is in a really dire situation here. He's within arrow range. This could go very south very quickly. And I feel like Cersei would happily kill Qyburn just to kill one of her greatest enemies, the person who killed her father. She would be willing to sacrifice that. It's something that she's wanted all the time. I know that George R.R. Martin said that he'd never kill off Tyrion because it's his wife's favorite character and his wife would leave him, whether that's a joke or not. I feel like Tyrion is a lot of people's favorite characters. If you want to go for shock value and you want to save this episode and you want to make this episode a 9.9 in everyone's eyes, you kill Tyrion there in that moment. You have him trying to run back to safety. You have Daenerys immediately run for her dragon. You have that moment of terror, and you have Tyrion killed by a flurry of arrows. Maybe have him struggle for a bit, but then never make it back. And that would be absolutely terrifying. Daenerys loses her 2 closest advisors, and suddenly you immediately believe the Mad Queen thing. You absolutely on the spot. That completely just makes her go into just beyond mode because she has no close friends. Over the course of 2 episodes, she would have lost her best friend, her closest advisor, and her hand. That would be absolutely killer for her. that would destroy her. And I think it would have merited a more emotional performance from Emilia Clarke. I mean, I don't doubt her performance. Her performance was phenomenal. But if you kill Tyrion as he looks away in that moment, even have Qyburn murdered off in that moment, like Daenerys doesn't care. Qyburn got caught in the chain of fire just because she wanted to kill one of her best enemies. That is Cersei. Cersei doesn't give a fuck. She'll blow up the she'll blow up the septum just because she wants to kill a couple of her enemies. She doesn't care what civilians get killed by it. She absolutely doesn't care. It takes out one of her enemies. It pisses off her other one. It leaves Daenerys completely defenseless and in a huge rage ball where she would burn down the city. That would have been the best play. It would have been the most shocking moment in Game of Thrones up until that point, killing off Tyrion. But they didn't go with it. And I think if they did go with it, it would have been like watching the Mountain of the Viper over again.
Yeah.
The shock moment you get from that. It would have been absolutely destroying. People would have been weeping. It would have been absolutely incredible. One of the best show moments, one of the best TV moments of all time, if they went through with it. They didn't.
I
didn't
agree.
Like the scene either.
I thought it was coming. Like I kind of hoped it would. Now, don't get me wrong, Tyrion is one of my favorite characters, and in many ways, this was. I don't want to say it was his episode. I don't think it was his episode, but the character moments he had were the most impactful to me, whether it was his old style of drinking games or his conversations with Varys and planning for the future and confronting his sister there in the face. I thought all the opportunities were there, and I agree with you. I think that if Tyrion had died in this moment, could you imagine when, he parlays with Cersei, he thinks he's got away with it, he thinks he's one-upped, he thinks he's quelled the situation, he turns his back, he's walking towards the camera, and then in the background, you just see that arrow whistle through in the background and then go right through him. Can you imagine how shocking that scene would have been? I think he could have gone. I think that would have been the perfect time to kill off Tyrion. It would have been horrible.
I think it would have been better if he went up to negotiate, and he did a brave thing by standing up to Cersei. Cersei had all the arrows pointed on him, and she told them to hold fire. They then kill Missandei, and he just kind of looks away like, fuck, the negotiations didn't work. This is going to be a horrible end to the battle. Daenerys isn't going to listen to my things anymore. But if Cersei immediately said, draw, and Tyrion's that close, they're not going to miss. I mean, at Daenerys' range, they have the shields around. They could easily protect her. That's why they don't attack. I mean, the ballistas, they could possibly get the dragon, but maybe it's a little bit out of range. Who knows? Like, all I'm saying is in that moment, Tyrion is the most vulnerable there and absolutely could be just shot down immediately. And that would be a brave decision by Tyrion to go up, but Daenerys would immediately think what a stupid decision that was, because he's got himself killed from a person who doesn't even take the idea of negotiations. She is just a cold-blooded murderer at this point. And that's the kind of character that you'd want to see her going up against.
And if she's already sent Bronn out to kill both Lannister brothers, if he shows up at her gate, she clearly knows that Bronn has failed.
I genuinely think, I'll tell you now, Bronn, she knew Bronn wasn't going to kill them. That's why they sent Bronn away. Like, I'm completely on board with that. I think that she sent Bronn away just because she didn't want Bronn to be in the capital and possibly assassinate when Bronn sees that the other two are fighting for the other side.
I don't think we can kind of round off now, I guess, because that's where the episode ends. But and obviously we're on a time limit here. I don't think we've seen enough of Cersei this season. I really don't. We've spent a lot of time in Winterfell, which has been necessary, but I mean, we've got 2 hours left roughly. And you're going to be ramping up to that ending, and it already looks like next episode is going to be very action-packed. We're going to be dealing with the, essentially where they go home to Dragonstone with their tail between their legs.
Maybe I feel like the final episode is going to be split into 1 hour of action and then 30 minutes of debrief, or possibly 1 hour of debrief, like 30 minutes of action. I feel like we can get the bulk of the action. Next episode is going to be the big episode. I mean, it's always the penultimate episode of the series. The Game of Thrones has been famous for being good at. It's the one thing they do best. It's the hype before the settling. And the next episode is going to be the biggest episode. I mean, Emilia Clarke said episode 5 is going to be the biggest TV moment you've ever seen. Find the biggest TV you can to watch it. I think it's going to be incredible. And one thing I will say is I'm really surprised that my local area hasn't done TV screenings of it. Because that would, cinema screenings of it, because that would be really good if they did.
Yeah, I mean, if they did like a midnight, or something like that, or a 2 in the morning at the cinema,
Oh,
which I
I'd go
don't
watch
think they
it.
would ever do.
I
I'd go
would
and
go
watch
watch
it.
it.
Totally, I would go and watch it as well. I mean, I know
To
it would
watch it
only
on
be an hour
that
long,
bigger
but
screen. I know it's made for TV, but to watch it on that bigger screen, anything on TV looks good. Of course.
Cloudy just says, "Isn't the guy that directed The Long Night also the director for the next episode?" I don't know. I hope not.
I'll have a very quick look just to find out. They still don't have the next episode name. I guess we're wrong in the episode names, by the way. Director of The Long Night was Miguel Sapochnik, and next episode
No, it's
is Miguel Sapochnik. Yep, you're right.
Oh, is it? Okay.
But he has directed some of the better episodes. You have to remember he directed Battle of the Bastards, Hard Home, the Winds of Winter episode. So he has done the best episodes of Game of Thrones in the past. So
and also one of the worst now. So it's kind of leveled out his resume a little bit.
I'm telling you now, Chris, it was a good battle. You may not have seen it, but it was a good battle.
We'll have to agree to disagree on that one, but we need to take off anyway. We are on a bit of a time limit today. But thank you to everyone in the comments. We've had Brinsley, we've had Lucas, Claudia, Sheila tuned in. We've had Iris as well, who's literally just tuned in. Please do go back and watch the rest of the episode. She had some reservations on the episode and some problems with it. Go back and watch the rest of our review. Leave us a comment as well if you want. We'll read all your comments next week. Any questions you have regarding this episode or the future of the series, any speculation, anything Game of Thrones, get your comments in and we'll read them out at the start of next week. So we'll be back, same time, right, next week?
It should be same time next week, yes.
Tuesday, 6 p.m. GMT will be live for episode 5. We still don't have an official name out for it just yet to be announced, apparently. Maybe this one will get leaked early. We don't know. But once again, big thank you to everyone, and we'll see you guys on the next show. See ya.